Is Squid Game inspired by the history of Brothers Home? The Netflix series Squid Game has captivated audiences worldwide with its intense portrayal of survival and desperation. Still, its roots may trace back to a darker chapter in South Korea's history, the Brothers Home. Established in the 1960s, this institution was initially intended to provide shelter for the homeless and marginalized. However, it became infamous for its inhumane conditions and mistreatment of residents. The parallels between the harrowing experiences depicted in Squid Game and the real-life horrors of Brothers Home highlight a societal critique of inequality and exploitation. As viewers engage with the series' brutal games of survival, they are confronted with the historical realities that inspired its creation, prompting a deeper reflection on human nature and societal values. Imagine a place where thousands were robbed of freedom under the guise of care. Between 1960 and 1988, the Brothers Home in Busan, South Korea, concealed unimaginable horrors. For decades, this so-called welfare institution masked systemic abuse, corruption, and death. This is a story the world must remember. In the 1960s, South Korea grappled with rapid urban migration and widespread poverty. Seen as a solution, Brothers Home promised rehabilitation for vagrants and orphans. But beneath this facade lurked dark intentions. What began as a welfare center became a cruel detention camp. Authorities were complicit, sweeping the homeless off the streets and delivering them to Brothers Home without due process. This cleanup prioritized appearances over human dignity, fueling mass incarceration without justification or scrutiny. Within Brothers Home's walls, over 4,000 individuals, including children, lived in inhumane conditions. Crowded spaces, scarce resources, and rampant disease defined their daily lives. What was meant to heal became a breeding ground for oppression, torment, and sorrow. For many, entering Brothers Home was a one-way path. Runaways were forcibly returned. Escape meant public rejection or further punishment. The institution wasn't a sanctuary, it was a trap enforced by fear and violence. Residents of Brothers Home were forced into unpaid labor under grueling conditions. Products manufactured here were sold for profit while detainees remained unpaid and malnourished. This was slavery disguised as rehabilitation. Leaders of Brothers Home pocketed government funds intended for the detainees' welfare. Millions were funneled into private pockets while those inside suffered. Even the veneer of charity crumbled under the weight of greed. Among thousands detained were innocent children, many as young as toddlers. Separated from families or taken from the streets, they bore the brunt of cruelty. Physical abuse and neglect were common nightmares for these abandoned souls. Some children were sold into adoption schemes packaged as charity efforts. Religious organizations aided these operations, unwittingly or willfully contributing to the home's tangled web of exploitation. The atrocities culminated in over 650 reported deaths. Malnutrition, torture, untreated illness, and violence silenced lives that could have flourished. But the home worked diligently to bury its crimes. Many truths remained hidden until brave voices emerged. Journalists, whistleblowers, and survivors dared to share the truth, exposing grisly testimonies. Yet even after the public learned of Brothers Home's horrors, justice was slow. The perpetrators avoided meaningful punishment, and many survivors still await closure. The Brothers Home epitomized abuse enabled by systemic neglect. Under South Korea's authoritarian regime, preserving order trumped protecting the vulnerable. Institutions like this thrived within blind spots created by societal apathy and governmental corruption. Today, survivors and activists fight relentlessly to keep this history alive, advocating for acknowledgement and restitution. The burdens of memory cannot stay hidden, and neither can the lessons of Brothers Home fade. The Brothers Home teaches us the dangers of unchecked power, societal discrimination, and ignoring the marginalized. It's a chilling reminder that welfare systems demand transparency and vigilance to avoid becoming instruments of harm instead of help. In conclusion, Squid Game serves not only as a gripping narrative of survival, but also as a poignant commentary on societal issues rooted in South Korea's past, particularly the grim realities of institutions like Brothers Home. The series sheds light on the struggles faced by the marginalized and reflects the pervasive inequalities that continue to exist today.